Peter 4, 7 through 14. The end of all things is near. Therefore, be clear-minded and self-controlled so that you can pray. Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers a multitude of sins. Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Each one should use whatever gift he has received to serve others, faithfully administering God's grace in its various forms. If anyone speaks, he should do it as one speaking the very words of God. If anyone serves, he should do it with the strength God provides, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. To him be the glory and the power forever and ever. Amen. And then it goes on in verse 12. Dear friends, do not be surprised at the painful trial you are suffering, as though something strange were happening to you. But rejoice that you participate in the sufferings of Christ, so that you may be overjoyed when his glory is revealed. If you are insulted because of the name of Christ, you are blessed, for the Spirit of glory and of God rests on you. And from the 5th chapter, verses 6 to 11. Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxiety on him, because he cares for you. Be self-controlled and alert. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in the faith, because you know that your brothers throughout the world are undergoing the same kind of suffering. And the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little while, will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. To him be the power forever and ever. Amen. My first working title was Lions and Fires, the Devil, oh my. And the text we have this Sunday make it clear, if it's not clear every single Sunday. We are reading ancient words from a time different than ours, a worldview different than ours. And yet we believe this is scripture. So we hear many times in this letter that the end is near, the end is near. There was this sense in the early church that, yes, exactly, Jesus would return, that Jesus had ascended and was sitting at the right hand of the Father, interceding, and he was going to come back. There was an urgency. And so the suffering that is described, thank you, Henry. The suffering that is described had a sense of, hang on, we're almost there. And though I confess that sometimes in the news it reads apocalyptically, I think our worldview is different with the sense of how we understand the presence of the living Christ still, and what it means for a world that is full of suffering and trials and evil. Let's pray. God, we come seeking hope. And like those early followers, we can feel like we're looking at something fading or ephemeral. Help us today to name the hope that is living hope, the hope that drives the life of the world through Christ. Amen. So in this meditation,
I will spend a little bit of time reflecting on the themes of the whole letter of 1 Peter, which I've read over and over and over. And then this is your chance to say, where do you see hope? Where do you experience hope? What is real for you? And some people sent me some offerings, which I will share with you, as well as some things that I found. We'll have a little time for writing on the fabric. And then it will still be your turn to say, so what is it? What allows you to find meaning every day, to keep going? The writer of Romans says, now hope that is seen is not hope, for who hopes for what is seen? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. And the image is from the book, The Fifth Sacred Thing. And it's the imagined hopeful future of San Francisco as a permaculture city in which everyone has enough. And it's a hopeful image that I can hang on to because I need to see things, as you will see. I think 1 Peter is a mirror of the world and of God's people at a particular place and time in which we share great suffering and great salvation as our experience as well, in which we learn more and more about the big picture of history, but with an imminent end time. We look for hope. And I'm going to suggest that the driving principles of hope in this letter, which talks about suffering 20 times, have to do with resistance and non-resistance in the face of suffering. That is the Jesus way. So Christ's suffering is named over and over and over again in this letter. See if in these snippets that I selected, you find anything familiar. Chapter 4, verse 1 says, therefore, since Christ has suffered for us in the flesh, equip yourselves likewise with the same mind. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that God might exalt you in due time. Christ Jesus chose to share in his eternal glory. You will suffer for a while, but God will make you complete, steady, strong, and firm. God will be in control forever. Amen. From the 5th chapter. Is that ringing any bells? Have this mind among you, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who poured himself out, who humbly took the role of a servant, who was obedient through great suffering, even death, and therefore God will make you complete, steady. God will lift you up. This is our task, our mission, to be like Jesus, to have the mind of Christ. And so that mind emphasizes non-resistance, we might say, because that was Jesus' teaching. Not fighting. So I was very curious when the word resist appeared in this last chapter. Be on your guard and stay awake. Your enemy is who? The devil is like a roaring lion sneaking around to find someone to attack. But you must resist the devil and stay strong in your faith. You know that all over the world, the Lord's followers are suffering just as you are. So here we have, again, from another worldview, a sense of personified evil, a force of evil that isn't in any one person, any one government, any one country, any one system, but yet is exemplified in all of those from time to time. So how do we resist if we're non-resistant? And this is the question we face on a daily basis in our current context. Jesus said, I say to you, do not resist an evildoer, but if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other. And remember, I demonstrated that the other day, how it's not just saying, I'm a doormat, want me around. It's saying, I'm going to resist. I'm going to stand firm. That's what the Greek is. I'm going to stand firm for love and respect. And if I suffer for that, so be it. May that suffering communicate to you who are caught up in the spirit of evil. So, if transforming love is the center of what Jesus was here for, part of that is non-resistance, the willingness to listen to what is inside of ourselves. And when something terribly offends us, to not say an offensive or tweet an offensive or Facebook an offensive thing back. It's a very practical discipline. Do not return evil for evil. So then what is resistance? If non-resistance is what you don't do, resistance is what you do. Again, in the service of love. So you may place yourself in a place like some people did in Tiananmen Square, where the consequences of standing your ground are probably death. Why would somebody do that? Is that an act of love? It's an act of exposing evil without becoming evil. And these two ways feed one another. We engage in both of them in order to have the wisdom to know what to do, when to stand, when to suffer, and how to do both of those things in the shape of the cross and the tomb. Knowing that both are real, both there will be diminishment and even death, and out of that comes life. Yes, even out of the life and death of M.J. Sharp comes life. This is our faith, that those who stand and those who refuse to use evil to fight evil are the ones changing the world, not the ones with $110 billion of weapons to sell. That's what some people would like us to believe, that that's how we save the world. But in our tradition, it absolutely is not. So I was desperately looking for hope this week. I am, I think, every week looking for what really makes sense. And two stories came my way. Have you heard of Aya Hijazi? Aya Hijazi is a young woman, she's Egyptian American, who wanted to do something in Egypt, she and her Egyptian husband. They decided not to participate in civil disobedience, not to organize in violent protests, but what she said was, we decided to build hope, doing something everyone could agree with, caring for street children. You see this resistance, non-resistance. Where am I going to place myself that makes a difference, that stands up for what is right? She was arrested. Some person she did not know came and said, you have my son, you sexually abused him. And she was in prison for 3 years on those charges, which could never be substantiated. In prison, she taught herself French and English and drawing. And she was very aware of being in the midst of many people who were suffering, many unjustly. She says thousands and thousands are in prison in Egypt. During the time of President Trump's visit here in the United States with the Egyptian leader and then abroad, many people advocated for her. And her husband said, in the midst of all this, we knew it is not normal to worry. It is not normal to live without hope. And they prayed fervently to be vindicated. She said, if a person keeps his core values in prison, that person has won. We have to say, we've given you a better world, or we die trying. And so she was released. Suddenly she was in a cage, literally in a cage in court, and spent long periods of time there while other hearings were happening. And suddenly she was released. And President Trump flew her to speak with him. And he said, now this was under the Brotherhood series of demonstrations, was it not? And she said, no, Mr. President, this was under the current leader with whom you just visited. So by her relatively simple, courageous act and her willingness to suffer unjustly, she has become a beautiful person and witness to God's love in the world. The second person I encountered was Abdallah al-Omari. He's a Syrian. He does not live in Syria, along with 5 million other Syrians. And he's created a show entitled The Vulnerable Series. Do you see any familiar faces in that artwork? The Vulnerable series by Abdallah al-Omari features a selection of recent portraits that reimagine controversial world leaders as disenfranchised or displaced civilians. In place of showing veneration for his familiar protagonists, however, Omari eliminates all suggestions of strength, charisma, and righteousness. Setting aside the hallmarks of autocratic visuals, he depicts them in moments of despair. Initially, the artist was driven by his own experiences of displacement and the anger that consumed him as the situation in his native Syria escalated. Intrigued by the romantic idea of vulnerability and the impact it can generate while depicting his subjects, Omari eventually arrived at the paradoxical nature of empathy. The paradoxical nature of empathy. His aim shifted from an expression of anger to a more vivid desire to disarm his figures, to picture them outside of their positions of power. This painting is called The Queue, and the artist is pictured on the left side. Intimate hours I've spent with them have taught me more than I could imagine, says the painter. Just as easily as everything worth defending can become defenseless, moments of absolute powerlessness can give you superpowers. Even I felt sorry for my version of Assad, the president of Syria. I have convinced myself vulnerability is the strongest weapon humankind possesses. Way more powerful than the trail of power games, bomb craters, and bullet holes in our collective memory. Vulnerability is a gift we should all celebrate. This is his picture of his president, up to his waist in water. I wanted to take away their power, not to serve me and my pain, but to give those leaders back their humanity and the audience an insight into what the power of vulnerability can achieve. So we have two little people, Aya and Abdallah, from suffering nations, doing what they can, working with street children and drawing pictures of their fellow prisoners, working working out their rage at global leaders through creating art and being willing to see the most powerful people as human, just like all the rest of us. Where do you find hope? I like finding somebody I can look at and say, that's imaginable, that's not crazy, I could do something like that. Here are some things that some of you shared. Holler if there's something you can't see. Oh, the ones that have words I will read. This is from an essay by Naomi Wingard after the tornado. My beloved wood was gone, and in its place a messy, soggy, impossible place where a struggle had been waged and lost. Death was everywhere. 3 years after the tornado, an international oil company clear-cut 4 more acres of the wood to lay a pipeline carrying some of the most poisonous crude oil in the world, diluted by bitumen, right under my feet, under my wood, hidden from sight. I seethed and ached for the wood, for the earth, for the place. But I also knew by then the hope that grows in places where life is shattered. I did protest, I did lament, I did pray. I do hope. And hope continues to work in me, showing me that flowers can thrive above a pipe full of poison. The life that is nurtured in that place is the evidence of a resilience without which we would certainly be doomed. There is much to fear. And in each fear, there is room for hope to grow. My work is to find the hope. Here are some images from Diane Oxender. Well, I'm sorry, I had technical difficulties this morning. So anyway, not so perfect. The kiss of the sun for pardon, the song of the birds for mirth. One is nearer God's heart in a garden than anywhere else on earth. And Diane remembered this hymn. Oh, what a wonderful, wonderful day, a day I will never forget. Maybe some of you know that hymn. Heaven came down, and glory filled my soul. Chris shared excerpts of an essay entitled Time Does Not Heal All Wounds by Omid Safi. I cannot tell you how often I have heard this from people. Time heals all wounds. It comes after a death, a betrayal, a breakup, a loss. As I've said before, we don't have rituals on how to process loss and grief. We know how to celebrate success and ceremonies through rituals like graduation and weddings. We have no rituals, no tradition for how to do divorce, the death of a child, or failure. Sometimes, not knowing what to say, people come up to us and say, it'll get better with time. It'll get easier with time. Patti Smith, the musician, reminds me of what Martin Luther King had said in a very different context. Time is morally neutral. Things do not get better by themselves. They also do not get worse by themselves. That's true whether we are talking about a society bending the arc of the moral universe toward the good and the just, or sliding towards an abyss of authoritarianism. It's also true when we speak about the healing of hearts. Hearts do not get better or worse by themselves. Wounds do not heal simply with the passing of time. At least not for all wounds. Sometimes wounds fester. If people get better, and thank God we do sometimes, it's that we work on healing. We are loved into healing. We tap into a strength that we didn't know we had. We call on family and friends to remind us of a worth and dignity we have lost along the way. But it is not merely time. As Patty says, time gives us the tools to endure them, to endure the wounds. Suzanne wrote this poem. Dormant hope. Hope is lying low, aware that the cycles and seasons will carry on, and silent in the darkness. Me, I carry on, plugging away at routines and commitments, grateful for love and friendship. Not doormat, but dormant. And I'm going to play this at the end, but I'll just say a bit. Several people have recommended to me Carrie Newcomer's newer CD. And one of the songs, Sanctuary, comes from this interaction with the Quaker Parker Palmer when she asked him, what can we do when we are personally or politically heartbroken? He responded, we take sanctuary. We gather with those we love in places like Brown Chapel. We remember, we share stories, or we sit in silence until we can go on. Friends, this is what we do, and what we will do right now is sit in silence. For your chance to write one more time, this time I really would like you to write, where do you find hope? And to help me, because I'm transcribing all these things off pieces of cloth, write hope and put a circle around it, so I know it's today's sharing. What is a source of hope, if you wish to share that, as well as your offering? And then during the reflection time, it will be your chance to say more. Hope with a circle. Where are you getting hope?